Before the world gets a vote. The first person who controls your morning controls your day. And most mornings, it isn't you. It's your phone. A notification lights the room. Your hand reaches before you're fully awake. One message becomes 5. 5 become 20. Someone else's emergency enters your mind. Someone else's opinion enters your mood. Someone else's life becomes your first thought. Before your feet touch the floor, you've already given yourself away. Then you wonder why you're distracted, why you're anxious, why your mind feels crowded before breakfast. The problem isn't that you lack discipline. Your attention was simply claimed too early. A calm morning begins differently. No performance, no frantic productivity, no impossible 5-hour ritual, just a quiet return to yourself. Before the headlines, before the messages, before the demands, before anyone asks anything from you, you get a few moments that belong entirely to you. That space changes more than your morning. It changes the woman who enters the rest of the day, because focus isn't something you find later. You protect it first. Chapter 1. The first 10 minutes. Morning reveals your relationship with yourself, not your intentions, your habits. The room is still dark. The curtains barely glow. Your alarm has just stopped. For a few seconds, nobody needs anything. This moment is more valuable than it looks. Most people destroy it immediately. They reach for the phone, they check the time, then the messages, then the news, then social media, then someone else's breakfast, someone else's vacation, someone else's argument, someone else's success. The mind hasn't even stood up yet, but it's already comparing, already judging, already reacting. That's a terrible way to begin. Your first thoughts should not belong to strangers. They should belong to you. So start with silence. Don't make it complicated. Sit up. Put your feet on the floor. Take one slow breath. Feel the weight of your body. Notice the temperature of the room. Listen to the silence. You are awake. You are here. Nothing else needs to happen yet. This sounds almost too simple. That's why people underestimate it. A calm mind needs an entrance. Silence provides one. Before you consume information, create some. Before you receive opinions, hear your own. Before you answer anyone, check in with yourself. Ask 3 quiet questions. How do I feel this morning? What matters today? What can wait? Don't judge the answers. You might wake up tired. That's information. You might wake up anxious. That's information. You might wake up excited. That's information too. You don't need to fix your emotional state. You need to recognize it. There's a difference. You aren't trying to manufacture happiness. You're building awareness. Maybe your chest feels tight. Maybe your mind already feels busy. Maybe yesterday's conversation is still sitting there. Notice it. Don't immediately follow it. Thoughts can exist without becoming commands. This is one of the most useful morning skills. You can notice a thought, then choose whether it deserves attention. Your mind may say, check your phone. You don't have to. It may say, see what happened overnight. You don't have to. It may say, you should already be productive. You don't have to. You are allowed to begin slowly. That isn't laziness. It is deliberate attention. Then get out of bed. Open the curtains. Let natural light enter. Drink some water. Wash your face. Move your body gently. Stretch your shoulders. Walk around the room. Nothing dramatic. You're simply telling your body, we are awake. There is power in physical simplicity. Cold water, clean clothes, fresh air, a made bed. Small actions create orientation. They tell your mind that the day has begun. And there is something else. Don't start your morning with judgment. You don't need to become a perfect woman today. You don't need an extraordinary schedule. You don't need to conquer everything. You need direction. Direction is calmer than ambition. Ambition can become frantic. Direction is quieter. It asks one question: where should my attention go? That's enough. Your morning isn't a race. It is the first decision. Will you consume, or will you choose? Will you react, or will you observe? Will you scatter your attention, or will you gather it? The answer begins before breakfast. Chapter 2. The Quiet Contract. Once your body is awake, give your mind somewhere to stand. This is where a short morning reflection becomes powerful. You don't need a complicated journal. You need honesty. Take a notebook, sit near a window. Let the morning light touch the page. Write down what matters. Not everything. What matters. Start with the day ahead. What deserves your best attention? Maybe it's a difficult meeting. Maybe it's an important project. Maybe it's a conversation you've avoided. Maybe it's simply getting through a hard week. Choose one central priority, not 12. 1. Then identify what can disturb you. A difficult person, an uncertain outcome, a delayed response, a mistake, a demanding schedule. Name it before it arrives. This changes your relationship with difficulty. You're no longer surprised by normal human problems. You expect them. That doesn't make you pessimistic. It makes you prepared. Some mornings will go beautifully, others won't. Someone will cancel. Someone will criticize you. Traffic will be terrible. Your computer will freeze. A conversation will go badly. Your plans will change. That's life. You don't need a perfect morning. You need a flexible mind. So ask yourself, what might not go my way today? Then ask, how do I want to respond? This second question is the important one. You can't control the first event. You can influence your response. Someone may be rude. You choose your tone. Someone may disappoint you. You choose your boundaries. Something may go wrong. You choose your next action. Someone may misunderstand you. You choose whether to chase approval. This is where calm becomes practical. You aren't pretending life is predictable. You're preparing to remain yourself when it isn't. That is a completely different mindset. Then write one sentence. Something simple. I will not rush what requires patience. Or, I will protect my attention today. Or, I can handle discomfort without reacting. Or, I don't need everyone's approval. Choose something that actually matters, not an inspirational quote, a personal instruction. Keep it close. Read it again later, because the morning version of you needs to prepare the afternoon version. The afternoon will be louder. People will ask things. Notifications will appear. Your energy will drop. The calm you created at 7 may disappear by 3. That's normal. The purpose of a morning routine isn't permanent serenity. It's building a reference point. You know what grounded feels like. Then you can return to it. And there is another morning practice worth protecting. Movement, not punishment. Movement. Walk outside, stretch. Do a few simple exercises. Feel your feet against the ground. Notice the air. Let your eyes focus on distant objects. Give your mind a physical rhythm. A morning walk can become almost meditative. No podcast, no scrolling, no constant stimulation. Just footsteps, breathing, wind, birds, traffic somewhere far away, the world moving without asking you to participate. This is where many women rediscover something. Their attention belongs to them. For a few minutes, nobody is performing. Nobody is selling anything. Nobody is demanding anything. You simply walk. That simplicity can be restorative, especially after a noisy life. Then, return home. Make coffee or tea. Prepare something nourishing. Eat without scrolling. Let breakfast be breakfast. This may sound insignificant, but rituals create psychological boundaries. The morning becomes a sequence. Wake, breathe, move, reflect, eat, begin. The sequence reduces unnecessary decisions, and fewer decisions create mental space. You don't need to negotiate with yourself every morning. You already know what happens next. That consistency builds trust. Not trust in the routine, trust in yourself. You become someone who keeps small promises. That matters. Because self-respect isn't built through grand declarations. It's built through repetition. You said you'd wake up. You did. You said you'd walk. You walked. You said you'd protect your attention. You did. Small evidence accumulates. Eventually, you believe yourself. That is confidence, not positive thinking. Evidence. Chapter 3. Entering the day untouched. There comes a moment when the morning ends, the door opens, the world enters, emails, traffic, people, deadlines, opinions, unexpected problems. Your peaceful room disappears behind you. This is where the routine proves its value. You don't carry the morning like a fragile object. You carry its principles. The phone will eventually come out. Messages will eventually arrive. News will eventually appear. That's fine. The goal isn't avoidance. The goal is order. You decide when information enters. Not every notification deserves immediate attention. Not every message requires instant response. Not every problem belongs to you. This is one of the quietest forms of freedom. You can leave something unanswered. You can finish your coffee first. You can complete your work. You can take a breath. You can think. Then respond. The world will not collapse because you waited 10 minutes. And if something truly matters, you will handle it calmly. This is why the first hour matters. It teaches your brain a pattern. You don't react to everything. You choose what deserves you. That principle follows you throughout the day. A coworker becomes difficult. Pause. A friend sends a strange message. Pause. A plan changes. Pause. Someone criticizes you. Pause. Your emotions rise. Pause. The pause becomes your private room. You can carry it anywhere. Inside a crowded office, inside a difficult conversation, inside a noisy airport, inside a stressful meeting. Nobody can see it, but you can feel it. One breath, 1 second, one decision. That's enough space to remain yourself. And sometimes, remaining yourself means accepting discomfort. You don't need every situation to feel good. You need it to be aligned. A difficult conversation can still be necessary. A demanding task can still be worthwhile. A disappointing answer can still be true. A stressful day can still be meaningful. Calm doesn't mean comfortable. That's an important distinction. A focused mind isn't always peaceful. Sometimes it's deeply engaged. Sometimes it's tired. Sometimes it's serious. But it knows where to place attention. That is the real goal. Not becoming permanently serene. Becoming intentional. So protect your attention like something valuable. Because it is. Your attention determines what your mind becomes. If you feed it outrage, outrage grows. If you feed it comparison, comparison grows. If you feed it noise, noise grows. If you feed it clarity, clarity grows. The morning gives you the first choice. What enters first? Choose carefully. You don't have to disappear from the world. You don't need to reject technology. You don't need to live like a philosopher in a mountain cabin. You need boundaries, simple ones. No phone for the first part of your morning. No unnecessary news before you've centered yourself. No social media before you've decided your priorities. No emotional conversations while half awake. No frantic checking. No beginning the day by comparing your life. Instead, light, water, breath, movement, reflection, food, focus. That's enough. And remember something important. Some mornings will fail. You will oversleep. You will grab the phone. You will skip the walk. You will forget the journal. You will wake up irritated. Don't turn one imperfect morning into an identity. That creates unnecessary shame. Simply return tomorrow. Consistency isn't never failing. It's returning without drama. That's a deeper form of discipline. You don't need punishment. You need repetition. Eventually, the routine becomes invisible. You don't think about it. You simply do it. And the benefits appear later. During the difficult meeting, during the unexpected phone call, during the argument, During the stressful afternoon, you notice something. You're not reacting quite as quickly. Your breathing stays slower, your thoughts remain clearer. You don't immediately assume the worst. You don't reach for your phone every time discomfort appears. You can sit with uncertainty. You can finish one task, then another. The morning didn't make you invincible. It made you familiar with yourself. That's more valuable. Because the woman who knows herself has somewhere to return. When the day becomes chaotic, she returns. When criticism hurts, she returns. When plans collapse, she returns. When fear appears, she returns. Not to perfection, to awareness. That is the quiet strength of a deliberate morning. It creates an internal anchor, and an anchor doesn't stop the ocean. It keeps you from drifting. So tomorrow morning, don't begin by asking, "What do I need to accomplish?" Ask something deeper. Who do I want to be today? Maybe the answer is patient, maybe focused, maybe courageous, maybe quiet, maybe disciplined, maybe simply present. Then let your actions support that answer. You don't need a perfect routine. You need a meaningful beginning. The curtains open. The room fills with light. Your feet touch the floor. The phone stays silent. For a moment, the world has no access to you. You breathe. You notice. You choose. Then you begin. Not rushed, not distracted, not waiting for someone else to tell you who to become. You begin as yourself, and before the world gets a vote, you have already chosen where your mind belongs, with you. The woman who doesn't panic. Panic is contagious when you mistake noise for truth. One person starts running, another starts shouting. Someone checks their phone again. Someone predicts the worst possible ending. Suddenly, the room feels smaller. Your heartbeat changes. Your breathing becomes shallow. You look around. Everyone seems certain something terrible is happening. And then you feel it, the urge to panic with them. But stop. Look again. What do you actually know? Not what they fear. Not what they predict. Not what the internet is screaming. What do you actually know? That question can save your peace. Because panic creates certainty without evidence. It turns possibilities into facts. It turns rumors into disasters. It turns 5 minutes into the end. And if you absorb everyone else's fear, you lose yourself. The strongest woman in the room isn't always the loudest. Sometimes she's completely still. Her phone lies face down. Her coffee sits untouched. Her shoulders remain relaxed. She listens. She observes. She waits. Not because she doesn't care, because she refuses to surrender her mind. Chapter 1. When the room catches fire. There is something strange about collective fear. It feels convincing. When everyone reacts, reaction feels reasonable. When everyone checks their phone, you check yours. When everyone starts predicting disaster, you predict it too. Fear becomes social proof. You don't need evidence anymore. You have witnesses. That is how panic spreads. One person says something alarming. Another person adds a detail. Someone else remembers an old story. Within minutes, the original fact disappears. Only the emotion remains. This happens everywhere. At work, in families, inside friendships, online, during financial uncertainty, during relationship problems, during sudden changes. A single message can change the atmosphere. Someone walks into the room differently. Their face looks tense. Their voice becomes sharper. You immediately notice. What happened? They tell you. Now you feel it too. Your mind starts racing. What if they're right? What if this gets worse? What if everything falls apart? Notice what happened. Nothing actually changed inside your world. Only your perception changed. You received information, then your imagination completed the story. This is one of fear's oldest tricks. It gives you an incomplete picture, then demands an immediate reaction. But you don't have to react immediately. You can pause. That pause is power. It creates distance between information and action, and distance creates judgment. Imagine someone throws a glass across the room. Your first instinct is to flinch. That's natural, but emotional panic works differently. You can interrupt it. You can breathe before responding. You can ask better questions. What happened? What is confirmed? What is only assumed? What can I control? What requires action right now? Those questions cut through emotional fog. They bring you back to the floor, back to the room, back to reality. Because panic rarely asks for truth. Panic asks for movement. Do something. Call someone. Send something. Check again. Refresh the page. Make a decision. Say something. Anything. But movement isn't always progress. Sometimes the wisest action is waiting. There is courage in not joining the rush, especially when everyone expects you to. You may feel pressure to react emotionally. You may even feel guilty for staying calm. People might say you don't care. They might say you're too detached. They might say you're not taking things seriously. But calm doesn't mean indifference. Calm can be deeply responsible. A surgeon doesn't panic because the room gets tense. A pilot doesn't scream because passengers are afraid. A firefighter doesn't become fire. Someone has to remain capable of thinking, why couldn't that person be you? You don't need perfect emotional control. You need enough space to choose your response. That space begins with your body. Unclench your jaw. Lower your shoulders. Put both feet on the floor. Take one slow breath. Look at something stationary, a wall, a table, a window, anything real. This sounds simple. It is simple. Simple doesn't mean weak. The body needs a signal of safety. Otherwise, your thoughts keep accelerating. And when thoughts accelerate, everything looks urgent. Not everything is urgent. That's worth remembering. Some problems require action. Some require patience. Some require information. Some require acceptance. And some disappear by themselves. Panic treats them all the same. It screams at everything. Wisdom doesn't. Wisdom separates. It sorts. It observes. It decides. That's what groundedness really means. Not feeling nothing. Feeling everything without losing direction. Chapter 2. The silence before the answer. There is a particular strength in being difficult to disturb. Not emotionally numb, not cold, simply grounded. You can hear bad news. Your stomach can tighten, your hands can become cold, your thoughts can race. And still, you don't immediately obey fear. That is emotional discipline. It starts with recognizing your triggers. Maybe uncertainty terrifies you. Maybe other people's anger affects you deeply. Maybe conflict makes you immediately apologize. Maybe silence makes you assume rejection. Maybe bad news makes you imagine catastrophe. These reactions aren't random. They usually have history. You may have learned them somewhere. Perhaps chaos once surrounded you. Perhaps you had to monitor people's moods. Perhaps unpredictability became normal. Perhaps you learned that danger arrived suddenly. So now your nervous system scans constantly. A raised voice feels enormous. A delayed message feels threatening. A change in someone's expression feels meaningful. You notice everything. But noticing isn't the same as knowing. That distinction can change your life. You can notice someone's silence. You don't know what it means. You can notice someone's anger. You don't know its cause. You can notice a problem. You don't know its outcome. You can notice uncertainty. You don't know its ending. This is where grounded women become different. They stop filling gaps with fear. They allow unanswered questions to remain unanswered. That can feel uncomfortable, but discomfort isn't danger. Read that again. Discomfort isn't automatically danger. Sometimes uncertainty simply feels unpleasant. You don't need to eliminate that feeling. You need to tolerate it. That is where self-trust grows. You begin discovering something important. I can wait. Those 3 words can be incredibly powerful. I can wait before responding. I can wait before deciding. I can wait before believing. I can wait before assuming. I can wait before abandoning myself. Waiting isn't weakness. Sometimes waiting protects you from your worst impulses. Think about messages sent during emotional storms. You write the paragraph, you reread it, you send it, then regret arrives. The feeling was real, the reaction wasn't necessary. Groundedness creates a gap. Inside that gap, your better judgment appears. You might still be angry, you might still be afraid, but now you're choosing. That is the difference. You aren't trying to become emotionless, you're becoming harder to hijack. And this matters when everyone around you panics, because panic will always search for somewhere to land. It may land on you. Someone will want reassurance. Someone will demand an answer. Someone will ask you to take sides. Someone will insist you act immediately. You can remain compassionate, but you don't have to absorb their emotional state. You can say, "I understand why you're worried." Then pause. You don't need to say, "You're right. Everything is terrible." Those statements are different. Empathy doesn't require agreement. You can understand fear without adopting it. You can sit beside someone who is panicking and remain internally quiet. That quiet is not cruelty. It may be the most helpful thing you offer, because emotional regulation can spread too. Fear spreads, so does calm. A grounded person changes a room, not through speeches, through presence. Their voice slows, their movements become deliberate, their questions become precise. They don't contribute unnecessary predictions. They don't repeat rumors. They don't make promises they cannot keep. They simply stay present. That presence gives other people somewhere to stand. And perhaps that's one of the greatest forms of strength, being the person who doesn't make the fire bigger. You don't need to extinguish everyone's fear, just don't feed it. Don't forward every alarming message. Don't repeat every rumor. Don't consume endless updates. Don't keep checking information that changes nothing. Information has a limit. After a certain point, more information becomes stimulation. You think you're staying informed, you're actually staying activated. There is a difference. Sometimes the most intelligent thing you can do is close the screen, put the phone down, make tea, take a walk, wash your face, open the window, return to your physical life. The world exists beyond the screen. Your body knows that. Your mind sometimes forgets. Chapter 3. Becoming your own anchor. Eventually, you have to ask a harder question. Who are you when everyone else is afraid? Not who do you pretend to be. Who are you? Do you become louder? Do you become controlling? Do you disappear? Do you start pleasing everyone? Do you look for someone stronger? Or do you remain yourself? This is where self-discovery begins. Crisis reveals your internal structure. It shows you what you reach for. Some people reach for control. Some reach for distraction. Some reach for reassurance. Some reach for other people's opinions. And some learn to return inward, not inward forever, just long enough to find their footing. There is a difference between isolation and inner stability. Isolation says, "I need nobody." Stability says, "I can think clearly before I reach outward." The second is strength. You can ask for help. You can seek advice. You can call someone you trust. You can admit you're scared. Groundedness doesn't require pretending you're invincible. It requires honesty. You can say, "I'm frightened," then ask, "What needs to happen next?" That's a powerful transition, from emotion to action, from panic to clarity, from imagination to reality. Fear asks, "What if everything goes wrong?" Groundedness asks, "What is actually happening?" Fear asks, "How will I survive this?" Groundedness asks, "What can I do today?" Fear looks 10 years ahead. Groundedness looks at the next step. That is why calm people often seem stronger. They aren't necessarily less afraid. They are closer to the present. The present contains manageable problems. The future contains endless possibilities. Fear loves possibilities. It can create thousands. The present usually has one thing. The next thing, wash the dishes, make the call, finish the task, take the walk, go to sleep, wait for more information, Have the conversation. One thing, then another. That's how stability is rebuilt. Not through one enormous realization, through small acts of control. You control your breathing, you control your attention, you control your words, you control your actions, you control what information enters your mind, you control whether you add fear to the room. That is enough. You don't control everyone else. You don't control outcomes. You don't control other people's reactions. You don't control uncertainty. You don't control tomorrow. And that's where many people suffer. They spend energy controlling the uncontrollable, then wonder why they're exhausted. A grounded woman doesn't need certainty. She needs orientation. She knows where she stands. She knows what matters. She knows what she refuses to become. That last part is important. When everyone around you panics, decide beforehand, I will not become cruel. I will not become reckless. I will not spread rumors. I will not make decisions from fear. I will not punish people for being scared. I will not abandon myself. Those decisions become an internal compass. Then the outside world can become chaotic. Your center remains. You may still cry. You may still shake. You may still need help. You may still have terrible days. Groundedness isn't perfection. It's returning again and again and again. You lose your balance. You find it. You react badly. You correct yourself. You become overwhelmed. You step away. You feel fear. You breathe. You continue. That's strength. Not never falling apart. Knowing how to return. There will always be moments when everyone panics. Markets panic. Families panic. Workplaces panic. Friend groups panic. Social media panics. The world has always been capable of noise. You don't have to become part of it. You can be informed without being consumed. You can be concerned without becoming frantic. You can be compassionate without becoming overwhelmed. You can prepare without catastrophizing. You can act without rushing. You can wait without becoming passive. And you can remain soft without becoming fragile. That balance is rare. It is also learnable. Start with the next moment. Not tomorrow, not next month, right now. Put your phone down. Relax your shoulders. Take one deep breath. Look around the room. Notice what is actually here. The chair, the floor, the light, your hands, your breath. This moment is real. The catastrophe in your imagination isn't. Maybe something difficult is coming. Maybe it isn't. You don't need to solve imaginary disasters tonight. You need to remain capable of meeting reality. And reality will always arrive one moment at a time. That is your advantage. You never have to live tomorrow today. You only have to meet today. Then tomorrow can come when it comes. This is what emotional independence looks like. You don't borrow fear from strangers. You don't inherit panic from crowds. You don't allow headlines to become your nervous system. You don't let someone else's certainty replace your judgment. You pause, you observe, you breathe, you decide. And if the situation truly requires action, you act. Calmly, precisely, without theatrical fear, without unnecessary noise. There is something almost intimidating about that kind of woman. Everyone else is searching for certainty. She is searching for truth. Everyone else is reacting. She is observing. Everyone else is predicting. She is preparing. Everyone else is shouting. She is listening. And when she finally speaks, her words matter. Because she didn't speak from panic. She spoke from clarity. That is the kind of strength nobody can manufacture overnight. It comes from knowing yourself. Knowing your triggers, knowing your values, knowing your limits, knowing what deserves your attention, and knowing what doesn't. So when the room becomes chaotic, don't ask, how do I make everyone calm? Ask something more useful. How do I remain myself? That question changes everything, because you are not responsible for controlling the emotional weather. You are responsible for carrying yourself through it. The storm can exist. Your center can exist too. The noise can rise. Your breath can remain slow. People can lose direction. You can keep yours. And perhaps the greatest freedom is this. You don't need the world to become calm. You can become calm inside the world. Not permanently, not perfectly, but enough. Enough to think, enough to choose, enough to act, enough to remain human. So when everyone around you starts panicking, pause. Don't borrow their fear. Don't become another loud voice. Don't rush simply because everyone else is rushing. Look at what is real. Separate facts from predictions. Separate danger from discomfort. Separate urgency from noise. Then take the next honest step. One breath, one decision, one action. That's enough. And if you lose your balance, return. If fear takes over, return. If the room becomes loud, return. Return to your breath. Return to your values. Return to yourself. Because the strongest person in the room isn't necessarily fearless. Sometimes she's simply the one who remembers. Panic is a feeling. It is not an instruction. The woman who stopped explaining her. Know every time you say yes against yourself, something inside gets quieter. Nobody hears it. Nobody sees it. You smile, you nod. You say, "Sure, I can do that." Then you walk away feeling strangely empty. Maybe your coffee gets cold beside you. Maybe you stare at the ceiling afterward. Maybe you wonder why you're exhausted again. The answer is simple. You said yes when everything inside screamed no. And perhaps the most painful part isn't helping someone. It's knowing you abandoned yourself again. You wanted to disappoint nobody, so you disappointed yourself instead. You wanted to avoid conflict, so you created conflict inside your own mind. You wanted everyone comfortable, so you carried the discomfort alone. For years, this can look like kindness. It can look generous. It can look feminine. It can even look emotionally mature. But there is a difference between kindness and self-erasure. A woman who cannot say no isn't always kind. Sometimes she's afraid. Afraid of being disliked. Afraid of being abandoned. Afraid of appearing selfish. Afraid someone will change their opinion. Afraid someone will leave. And eventually, she becomes exhausted from managing everyone else's feelings. Then something changes. She realizes something uncomfortable. Other people's disappointment isn't her emergency. That realization is quiet, but it can completely change her life. Chapter 1. The guilt after the word. The hardest part of saying no isn't saying it. It's surviving the silence afterward. You decline an invitation. You put your phone down. Then you wait. Your mind starts writing imaginary conversations. Did I sound rude? Do they think I'm selfish? Should I explain more? Maybe I should apologize. You pick up the phone. You type 3 paragraphs, then delete them. You write another message. You soften everything. You add unnecessary excuses. You say you're tired. You say you're busy. You say maybe next time. You try making your no easier to swallow. Why? Because you don't just want to communicate. You want permission to have boundaries. And that's where guilt becomes dangerous. Guilt can make you question perfectly reasonable decisions. You can decline something politely. Still, your chest feels tight. You can protect your evening. Still, you feel selfish. You can refuse someone's request. Still, you imagine their disappointment. The feeling becomes evidence. You think, if I feel guilty, I must be wrong. But feelings don't work that way. Guilt doesn't automatically mean wrongdoing. Sometimes guilt means you're doing something unfamiliar, especially when you've trained people to expect your availability. Your first boundary may feel almost cruel, not because it is cruel, because you are finally doing something different. You are changing the agreement. Maybe the agreement was never spoken, but everyone understood it. You always answer. You always help. You always forgive. You always rearrange your schedule. You always listen. You always stay. Then one evening, you don't. And suddenly, people notice. That's when the pressure begins. What's wrong with you? You've changed. You used to be different. Why are you being difficult? Those words can trigger old instincts. You want to prove you're still good. You want to explain everything. You want to restore the old peace. Don't rush. Take one breath. Look at what actually happened. You said no. That's all. You didn't betray anyone. You didn't attack anyone. You didn't become heartless. You simply declined, and someone disliked your answer. That is allowed. This is one of adulthood's hardest lessons. You can be a good person. Someone can still be disappointed. Those two truths can exist together. You don't have to eliminate disappointment. You have to stop fearing it. Because if someone's happiness requires your constant compliance, that's not peace. That's dependence. And dependence creates invisible chains. You become responsible for moods, then reactions, then expectations, then everyone else's comfort. Eventually, your life isn't yours. Your calendar belongs to other people. Your evenings belong to other people. Your energy belongs to other people. Even your emotions become public property. Someone gets upset. You immediately feel responsible. Someone withdraws. You panic. Someone criticizes you. You question yourself. Someone asks for something. You automatically say yes. That isn't emotional freedom. That's emotional servitude, and it can hide behind a beautiful word. Nice. But being nice isn't the highest form of goodness. Integrity is. Integrity means your actions match your values. Sometimes integrity requires a no, a quiet no, a respectful no, a final no. No dramatic explanation, no emotional performance, no courtroom defense, just no. And that can feel terrifying, especially if you learned love through accommodation. Maybe you learned to be easy, easy to live with, easy to please, easy to forgive, easy to disappoint. You learned that difficult women get rejected, so you became convenient. But convenience isn't identity, and eventually, the woman underneath it gets tired. She wants her life back. Chapter 2. When love becomes a bargain. Some of the hardest no's happen inside relationships. Not romantic relationships only. Friendships, families, workplaces. Any place where affection and expectation become tangled. You love someone. They ask for something. You don't want to do it. Immediately, your brain creates a problem. If I say no, they'll think I don't care. That's the trap. You start using compliance as proof of love. You give your time. You give your energy. You give your attention. You give second chances, then more second chances. Eventually, resentment appears. Quietly at first. A sigh. A shorter reply. A little distance. You wonder why you're becoming bitter. The answer may be simple. You keep giving what you don't freely want to give. Resentment often grows where boundaries should have been. That's why a clean no can be an act of love. It prevents hidden anger. It prevents silent punishment. It prevents emotional accounting. You don't keep score. You don't think, after everything I did. You simply communicate honestly. I can't do that. I don't want to. That doesn't work for me. I'm not available. I've decided not to. Notice something. None of those sentences require an essay. You don't need 12 reasons. You don't need evidence. You don't need permission. You need clarity. And clarity can feel rude to people accustomed to your confusion, especially when you stop explaining yourself. Explanation can become another form of begging. You explain because you hope they'll approve. You add details because you fear rejection. You soften your position because you want agreement. But boundaries aren't negotiations. Sometimes you're not asking someone to understand. You're informing them of your decision. That's different, and it changes the emotional balance. You can care about someone, still say no. You can respect someone, still disagree. You can love someone, still leave. You can appreciate someone's feelings, still refuse their request. This is where emotional independence becomes real. You stop confusing empathy with obedience. Empathy says, I understand that you're disappointed. Obedience says, therefore, I must change my decision. Those are completely different. You can offer the first, without surrendering to the second. This becomes especially powerful when someone uses guilt. Maybe they say, after everything I've done for you. Maybe they become silent. Maybe they become dramatic. Maybe they question your character. Maybe they call you selfish. Your instinct may be to defend yourself, but sometimes defense gives manipulation more oxygen. You don't have to prove your goodness. Your character isn't determined by one refusal. Let the moment breathe. You can say, "I understand you feel that way." Then stop. No argument, no counterattack, no desperate explanation. Silence can be incredibly powerful, not cold silence, grounded silence. The silence of someone who doesn't need to win. You are allowed to let another person misunderstand you. That's a difficult form of freedom. Most people want universal approval, but universal approval requires constant shape-shifting. You become different around everyone. One version at work, another version with family, another version with friends, another version inside relationships. Eventually, you don't know which version is real. A firm no begins reversing that. It creates continuity. The person you are privately becomes visible publicly. Your values become recognizable. Your boundaries become predictable. People learn what access actually means. Some people will respect that, some won't. That difference is useful. A boundary doesn't only protect you, it reveals people. Watch what happens after your no. Healthy people may be disappointed, then they adjust. Controlling people may punish you. They may escalate. They may mock your boundary. They may test it repeatedly. That tells you something. Don't waste the information. You don't need to convince everyone to respect you. You need to notice who already does. That is discernment, and discernment protects your peace. Chapter 3. The freedom of not being liked. Eventually, there comes a quieter realization. You don't need everyone to like you. You don't even need everyone to understand you. That doesn't mean becoming careless. It means becoming honest. You can remain warm. You can remain compassionate. You can remain generous. But generosity becomes a choice, not a reflex. That distinction changes everything. Imagine your phone buzzing late at night. Someone needs something. You are exhausted. Your body says no. Your mind says yes. Old conditioning starts speaking. Be useful. Don't disappoint them. Just do it. But you pause. You take a deep breath. You look around your quiet room. Then you choose yourself. Not dramatically, not angrily. Simply honestly. No, I can't tonight. Then you put the phone down. That moment matters because you're teaching yourself something. My needs are real too. Your nervous system learns. Your identity learns. Your relationships learn. You learn that guilt can exist without control. This is crucial. You don't need to wait until guilt disappears. Say no while feeling guilty. Then let the guilt pass. Feel it. Don't worship it. Don't obey it. Let it move through you, like weather. Because guilt is often temporary, but self-betrayal can become a pattern. And patterns shape lives. Every unnecessary yes has a cost. Maybe it's sleep. Maybe it's focus. Maybe it's creativity. Maybe it's healthful rest. Maybe it's time with people you love. Maybe it's time alone. Maybe it's your own dreams. Your calendar reveals your real boundaries. Look at it honestly. How much of your week belongs to you? How much belongs to obligation? How much belongs to fear? How much belongs to other people's expectations? These questions can sting, but they can also wake you up. Your life is finite. Every yes spends something. Time doesn't return. Energy doesn't magically multiply. Attention is limited, so a no isn't always rejection. Sometimes a no is protection. No to another unnecessary meeting. No to another argument. No to another late-night crisis. No to another favor you resent. No to another relationship built on guilt. No to another version of yourself. The version that apologizes for having needs. The version that explains every decision. The version that fears being called selfish. You can retire her. Gently. Without shame. She was probably protecting you once. Maybe she learned that approval meant safety. Maybe she learned that conflict meant danger. Maybe she learned that saying no caused punishment. If so, don't hate that version. Thank her, then teach her something new. You are safe now. You can disappoint someone. You can survive their reaction. You can leave an uncomfortable conversation. You can close the door. You can choose differently. This is where a firm no becomes something beautiful. It stops being a weapon. It becomes a compass. It tells you where you end. It tells others where they end. Healthy relationships need that space. Without boundaries, closeness becomes possession. With boundaries, closeness becomes choice. And chosen connection is stronger because you're there freely, not because you're afraid, not because you're trapped, not because you're performing goodness. You're there because you want to be. That is real generosity. You give without keeping score. You help without resentment. You listen without disappearing. You love without surrendering yourself. And when you cannot give, you simply don't. No performance, no guilt ritual, no 20-minute explanation, just honesty. There is something deeply feminine about that strength. Not because women should become harder, because women are often taught to absorb more emotions, more expectations, more invisible labor, more social pressure, more responsibility for everyone's comfort. Saying no interrupts that pattern. It says, I am here too. My time matters too. My energy matters too. My peace matters too. My answer matters too. That isn't selfishness. That is self-respect. And self-respect often looks boring. It doesn't scream. It doesn't threaten. It doesn't make speeches. It simply closes the door. Then it returns to the book, returns to the coffee, returns to the quiet evening, returns to life. That's the beauty of a mature boundary. It doesn't consume your attention. You say no. Then you move on. You don't spend 3 hours analyzing it. You don't replay their reaction. You don't invent future conflicts. You don't punish yourself. You breathe. You continue. That is emotional sovereignty. And perhaps the deepest freedom isn't saying no. It's no longer needing your no to be approved. Someone can dislike it. You remain. Someone can misunderstand it. You remain. Someone can call you selfish. You remain. Someone can walk away. You grieve. Then you remain. You don't chase them down. You don't betray yourself for reconciliation. You don't turn cruel. You simply accept reality. Not everyone will like your boundaries. That's not a failure. It's the natural cost of having them. A woman with no boundaries is easy to please. A woman with boundaries is easy to understand. And that distinction matters. People don't need unlimited access to you. They need clarity. You need clarity too. So the next time your instinct says yes, pause. Don't answer immediately. Take one breath. Feel your body. Ask yourself one question. If nobody became upset, would I still want this? Listen carefully. Your first honest answer matters. If the answer is no, honor it. You don't need a dramatic reason. You don't need a perfect explanation. You don't need permission. You can simply say no. And then let the silence exist. Let someone be disappointed. Let someone ask why. Let them have their feelings. Those feelings belong to them. Your decision belongs to you. That is the boundary. That is the freedom. And eventually, something unexpected happens. People begin learning who you actually are. More importantly, you learn who you actually are. You discover your limits, your values, your priorities, your energy, your real desires. Your real yes becomes more meaningful because it isn't contaminated by fear. When you say yes now, you mean it. When you offer your time, you offer it freely. When you help, you aren't secretly hoping for approval. When you love, you aren't bargaining for security. Your yes becomes cleaner because your no became stronger. And maybe that's the final lesson. A powerful woman isn't the woman who never disappoints anyone. She's the woman who refuses to disappoint herself constantly. She can be kind, she can be gentle, she can be generous, she can be deeply loving and still say no, without hatred, without drama. without guilt deciding her future. She understands something simple. Your life cannot belong to everyone. Your time cannot belong to everyone. Your energy cannot belong to everyone. Your peace cannot belong to everyone. Some things must remain yours. Your morning, your values, your boundaries, your silence, your direction, your self-respect. So say no when you mean no. Say it softly. Say it clearly. Say it once. Then breathe. Let the discomfort pass. Let the silence remain. You don't have to rescue anyone from disappointment. You don't have to rescue yourself from guilt. You simply have to remain honest. Because every honest no creates space. Space for rest. Space for purpose. Space for love. Space for yourself. And sometimes the most powerful thing a woman can say isn't loud. It is one quiet word. No. And for the first time, she means it.
When your old life disappears, sometimes loneliness arrives after you finally get what you wanted. The apartment is yours. The job is yours. The relationship is over. The city is new. The future finally belongs to you. And somehow, you feel completely alone. There is no disaster. Nothing is technically wrong. Still, something feels missing. You wake up beside unfamiliar walls. Morning light touches an empty chair. Your coffee gets cold beside the window. Your phone stays strangely quiet. Nobody asks where you are going. Nobody expects you home tonight. Nobody knows what your Tuesday looked like. And that silence can feel enormous, especially when you chose to change yourself. People rarely talk about this part. They celebrate the leaving. They celebrate the promotion. They celebrate the new apartment. They celebrate the divorce. They celebrate the fresh beginning. But nobody celebrates the strange silence afterward. Nobody tells you that freedom can feel lonely. Nobody tells you that growth can feel like grief. Nobody tells you that becoming someone new costs something. Sometimes it costs familiarity. Sometimes it costs people. Sometimes it costs an entire identity. And sometimes you have to sit alone afterward, not because you failed, because your old life no longer fits. Chapter 1. The empty room. There is a particular kind of loneliness. It appears after something important ends. Maybe you left a relationship. Maybe your closest friend moved away. Maybe your children became independent. Maybe you changed careers. Maybe you moved across the country. Maybe you finally escaped a place that exhausted you. You thought relief would come immediately. Instead, there was silence, heavy silence, the kind that sits beside you, the kind you cannot distract yourself from. At first, you blame the loneliness. You think something went wrong. You wonder if leaving was a mistake. You remember familiar mornings, familiar voices, familiar routines. Even the annoying things start looking beautiful. You remember the old kitchen, the old neighborhood, the old coffee shop, the person who always knew your order. You remember conversations you once found boring. Now those conversations feel precious. This is where the mind becomes dangerous. It starts romanticizing what disappeared. It edits out the pain. It softens the arguments. It forgets the exhaustion. It remembers warmth. It forgets why you left. That is why loneliness can pull you backward, not because the past was better, because the past was familiar. Familiarity feels safe during uncertainty. Even unhealthy familiarity can feel comforting. Your mind would rather understand pain than experience unfamiliar peace. That distinction matters because sudden loneliness often isn't about missing someone, it is about missing your old identity. You knew who you were before, you knew your role, you knew where you belonged, You knew what tomorrow looked like. Then everything changed. Suddenly, your identity has empty spaces. You aren't someone's partner anymore. You aren't the employee you used to be. You aren't living in that neighborhood. You aren't surrounded by those friends. You aren't following that old routine. So the question becomes uncomfortable. Who am I now? That question can echo for months. It can appear while brushing your teeth. It can appear during grocery shopping. It can appear when something funny happens. You instinctively reach for your phone. Then you remember, things are different now. That tiny moment can hurt. But it also reveals something important. You are not broken. You are between identities. There is a difference. One suggests something is wrong. The other suggests something is changing. You are standing between two versions of yourself. The old version has already ended. The new version hasn't fully arrived. That middle space feels lonely, but it is also where freedom grows. You don't have to fill it immediately. That is the temptation. When silence becomes uncomfortable, fill it. Download another app. Text someone from the past. Start dating immediately. Accept every invitation. Work until midnight. Watch videos until sleep. Stay constantly stimulated. Anything to avoid the empty room. But constant noise prevents you from hearing yourself. And you need to hear yourself now. Because your old life cannot tell you who you are. It can only tell you who you were. That distinction becomes critical after major change. You don't need to rebuild your old life. You need to understand your new one. That takes patience. And patience can feel painfully boring, especially when you're lonely. But loneliness isn't always an emergency. Sometimes loneliness is information. It tells you something has changed. It tells you your social world needs rebuilding. It tells you certain needs are unmet. It tells you connection matters. But it doesn't tell you to return backward. That's an important difference. You can acknowledge loneliness without obeying it. You can miss someone without contacting them. You can feel abandoned without abandoning yourself. You can grieve without reversing your decision. This is where emotional strength begins. Not with feeling less, with reacting less impulsively. The feeling arrives. You let it sit. You breathe. You notice it. You don't immediately build a story around it. You don't say, nobody needs me. You don't say, I made the worst mistake. You don't say, I'll always be alone. Those statements sound like conclusions. They're usually just pain speaking. Pain wants certainty. You don't have to give it certainty. You can simply say, this is lonely. That's enough. No prophecy, no dramatic meaning, just the truth. Tonight is lonely. Tomorrow may feel different. That is all you need to know. Chapter 2, the people you miss. There is another layer to sudden loneliness. Sometimes you don't miss the person. You miss who you were around them. This is harder to understand. Maybe you miss being someone's first call. Maybe you miss having inside jokes. Maybe you miss knowing someone's schedule. Maybe you miss being expected somewhere. Maybe you miss having a witness. Someone who saw your ordinary life. Someone who noticed small things. The new haircut, the bad mood, the quiet morning, the strange dream, the ridiculous story. Human beings need witnesses. We need people who know our ordinary details, not because we're weak, because connection gives life texture. But there is a danger here. When someone disappears, you may mistake absence for destiny. You think you must replace them immediately. You start searching for another person, not because you love them, because you hate the silence. That distinction matters. A new relationship can become emotional anesthesia. A new friendship can become a distraction. A new social circle can become another performance. You can surround yourself with people and still remain deeply lonely, because loneliness isn't measured by room size. It is measured by emotional distance. You can sit among 20 people and feel completely unseen. You can sit alone and feel deeply connected to yourself. That's why rebuilding your life requires intention. Don't simply find more people, find more honest connections. Start smaller. One conversation, one walk, one coffee, one shared interest, one person who feels safe. You don't need a crowd immediately. You need a few places where you can exhale, and there is something else. You need to become comfortable being unknown. This is one of the strangest parts. After a major life change, people may not know you. They don't know your history. They don't know your achievements. They don't know your mistakes. They don't know your old reputation. At first, this can feel lonely. Eventually, it can feel liberating. Nobody expects the old version. Nobody is waiting for you to behave traditionally. Nobody knows what you used to tolerate. Nobody knows what you used to fear. You can experiment. You can change. You can become quieter. You can become more ambitious. You can become more selective. You can discover interests you abandoned. You can wear different clothes. You can change your routine. You can wake up earlier. You can learn something completely new. You can build a life nobody recognizes. That can be frightening. It can also be beautiful, because sometimes loneliness is simply the price of becoming unfamiliar. And unfamiliarity feels empty before it feels exciting. Think about an empty apartment. Before furniture arrives, it feels cold. The walls echo. Every footstep sounds exaggerated. Then slowly, things appear. A lamp, a chair, a plant, a bookshelf, a photograph, a blanket. The room becomes yours. Your inner life works the same way. You need to furnish it, not with distractions, with meaning. Build rituals, build competence, build friendships, build physical routines, build creative interests, build private traditions. Give yourself places to belong. You might start walking every morning, not for productivity, just because the streets are quiet. You might read beside a window. You might cook something slowly. You might keep a journal. You might visit the same bookstore. You might learn a language. You might volunteer somewhere. You might join a class. The activity itself isn't the point. Consistency is. Repeated experiences create familiarity. Familiarity creates belonging. Belonging slowly reduces loneliness. You don't need to force it. You need to participate. That is a crucial distinction. Waiting for life to feel different rarely works. You have to enter life differently. And this includes relationships. After a major ending, your standards may become confused. You may crave immediate intensity. Intensity can feel like connection. It isn't always connection. Sometimes intensity is simply uncertainty. Someone texts constantly. You feel wanted. Someone disappears. You panic. Someone returns. You feel relief. That emotional cycle can feel addictive, but peace feels different. Peace can initially feel boring. There is no guessing, no chasing, no decoding, no emotional roller coaster, just consistency. That can feel unfamiliar after chaos. So when rebuilding your social life, watch your nervous system. Notice what makes you calm. Notice what makes you tense. Notice who makes you feel smaller. Notice who lets you speak naturally. Notice who requires performance. Notice who respects silence. Notice who respects boundaries. Notice who celebrates your growth. This isn't about becoming suspicious. It's about becoming discerning. You don't need everyone. You need people who fit your new life. And sometimes that means grieving old relationships, not because they were bad, because they belong to another chapter. Some people are beautiful memories. They don't need to become permanent fixtures. You can appreciate what they gave you. You can release what they cannot give anymore. That is not betrayal. That is maturity. There is tenderness in letting people remain in the past. You don't have to turn them into villains. You don't have to rewrite history. You can simply accept the ending. Some doors close without becoming mistakes. Some people leave without becoming enemies. Some relationships finish without anyone being evil. Sometimes two lives simply stop matching, and that's enough. Chapter 3, Becoming Your Own Company. Eventually, the hardest part begins. You have to learn how to be alone, not distracted, not waiting, actually alone. That means sitting in a quiet room, no music, no messages, no television, no endless scrolling, just you. At first, the silence may feel unbearable. Your mind starts producing noise, old memories, future fears, imagined conversations, things you should have said, things someone should have said. You may want to escape. Don't judge yourself for that. Just notice it. Take one slow breath, then another. You are teaching yourself something. You are teaching yourself that silence is survivable. This matters more than it seems, because a woman who cannot tolerate solitude becomes vulnerable. She may accept bad company. She may tolerate disrespect. She may stay where she has outgrown. She may confuse attention with affection. She may return to what hurt her simply because emptiness feels worse. But when you learn to tolerate solitude, choices change. You stop choosing people from panic. You choose them from clarity. That's a massive difference. You no longer ask, who will make me feel less alone? You begin asking, who makes my life more meaningful? The first question comes from fear. The second comes from discernment. That is emotional independence. You don't reject connection. You become selective about it. You stop treating loneliness as evidence. Loneliness doesn't prove you're unwanted. It proves you're human. You can be deeply loved and still feel lonely tonight. You can have wonderful friends and still need more connection. You can be proud of your independence and still want someone beside you. These things can coexist. You don't need to choose between strength and tenderness. Real strength has room for both. You can say, I miss someone, without saying, I need them back. You can say, I'm lonely, without saying, I'll accept anyone. You can say, I'm scared, without saying, I can't handle this. You can say, I want connection, without saying, I will abandon myself for it. That is maturity. It allows emotion without surrender. And slowly, your days begin changing. The morning feels less empty. The apartment begins feeling like home. The city becomes familiar. The silence becomes softer. You stop checking your phone every few minutes. You stop hoping for one particular notification. You stop measuring your day through someone else's attention. Then something subtle happens. You start enjoying your own life again, not the old life, the new one. You notice the sunset, you notice music, you notice your food, you notice your body relaxing, you notice how peaceful your evenings feel. You notice that you have choices. You notice that nobody is demanding your energy. You notice that your schedule belongs to you. You notice that your future is unwritten. That last part can feel terrifying. It can also be intoxicating because an unwritten future contains possibility. You don't know who you'll become. You don't know who you'll meet. You don't know where you'll live. You don't know what you'll build. And maybe that's okay. Maybe you don't need answers yet. Maybe you need room. Room to think. Room to grieve. Room to experiment. Room to fail. Room to become unfamiliar. Major life changes often remove certainty. They also remove limitations. The same empty space that scares you can hold possibility. You just can't see it immediately. That's the cruel part. New beginnings rarely look beautiful at first. They look unfinished. They look awkward. They look lonely. They look like boxes on the floor. They look like unanswered messages. They look like unfamiliar streets. They look like eating dinner alone. They look like learning everything again. But unfinished doesn't mean wrong. It means unfinished. Give yourself time. Don't demand that your new life feel like home immediately. You didn't build your old life in one afternoon. You accumulated it. Years of routines, years of friendships, years of memories, years of familiarity. Of course, the new version feels empty. It has barely been furnished, so stop judging the empty room. Start furnishing it, one habit at a time, one friendship at a time, one boundary at a time, one experience at a time, one morning at a time. And don't forget something important. You are allowed to miss the past. You're allowed to grieve. You're allowed to have complicated feelings. You don't need to become relentlessly positive. Some endings deserve sadness. Some people deserve tears. Some chapters deserve mourning. But grief doesn't require return. You can grieve with the door closed. You can miss someone and still move forward. You can remember something fondly and still know it ended. That is one of the strongest forms of acceptance. Not pretending you don't care. Caring without surrendering your future. That is what makes emotional self-reliance so powerful. You become capable of carrying your own heart. You don't hand it to the nearest person. You don't ask someone else to carry every fear. You don't expect another human being to become your entire world. You build your own center, then you invite others into it. That changes love. It changes friendship. It changes everything. You stop looking for someone to rescue you. You start looking for someone to walk beside you. You stop asking someone to complete your life. You ask whether they complement it. You stop fearing every ending. You understand that some endings create space. You stop worshiping familiarity. You start respecting truth. And perhaps the most important shift is this. You stop seeing solitude as rejection. You start seeing it as territory. A quiet place where you can hear yourself. A place where nobody is telling you who to become. A place where you can ask difficult questions. What do I actually want? What do I believe? What makes me feel alive? What have I tolerated? What am I afraid to admit? Who am I without that relationship? Who am I without that career? Who am I without that social circle? Who am I when nobody is watching? Those questions can feel frightening. They can also change your entire life. Because eventually, you realize something. Your old identity was never your entire identity. It was one expression of you. The woman who existed before the change is still there, but she has learned something. She can survive uncertainty. She can survive silence. She can survive endings. She can survive being misunderstood. She can survive an empty room. And more importantly, she can build again. That knowledge creates a different kind of confidence. Quiet confidence. It doesn't announce itself. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't post proof. It simply knows. If everything changes again, I will adapt. If someone leaves, I will grieve. If plans collapse, I will rebuild. If I become lonely, I will reach out. If I need help, I will ask. If I need solitude, I will take it. I don't have to fear either one. That is freedom. Not needing life to remain predictable, not needing every relationship to last, not needing every chapter to make sense. You can trust yourself inside uncertainty, and suddenly, loneliness loses its sharpest weapon. It can no longer convince you that you're abandoned, because you know how to stay. You know how to stay with yourself. Through the quiet morning, through the cold coffee, through the unfamiliar apartment, through the long drive home, through the empty weekend, through the difficult night, you stay, you breathe, you keep building. And one day, without noticing exactly when, the room changes. The same walls feel warmer, the same silence feels peaceful. Your phone can remain face down. You don't need to know who is calling. You don't need to know who is thinking about you. You are living, not waiting. And that's when you understand the strange gift hidden inside loneliness. It taught you something comfort never could. You can belong to yourself. You can build connection without desperation. You can love without disappearing. You can be alone without being abandoned. You can leave without losing yourself. You can begin again without needing permission. The empty room was never proof that your life was empty. It was simply empty space. And empty space can become anything. A desk, a library, a studio, a sanctuary, a home, a new life. So if everything changed recently, breathe. Don't rush to replace what disappeared. Don't force yourself to feel grateful. Don't pretend you aren't grieving. And don't mistake loneliness for failure. You are standing between chapters. The old world is behind you. The new world is still quiet. That silence may frighten you. Let it. You don't need to fill every silence. Some silences are doing important work. They are clearing the room. They are removing the noise. They are returning your attention. They are giving you back to yourself. And maybe that's what you needed all along. Not another person to complete the picture. Not another distraction from the uncertainty. Not another version of your old life. Just enough courage to sit quietly. Enough patience to let yourself change. Enough discipline to keep moving. Enough tenderness to forgive yourself. And enough self-respect to never abandon yourself again. Because someday, someone new may enter your life. A friend, a partner, a mentor, a community. And when they arrive, you won't need them to save you. You won't need them to erase your loneliness. You won't need them to prove your worth. You'll simply have something beautiful to offer. A whole woman, a woman who knows how to stay, a woman who knows how to leave, a woman who knows how to love, a woman who knows how to stand alone. And that kind of woman doesn't fear change anymore. She respects it because she knows what change eventually reveals. The life you lose is not always the life you need. Sometimes the empty room is an invitation. Sometimes loneliness is the first quiet sign that your life is becoming yours.
The woman who needs nothing. The most dangerous woman is not the loudest one. She is the woman who stopped begging, not for attention, not for reassurance, not for permission to become herself. She can sit alone with difficult thoughts. She can hear silence without filling it. She can leave without creating a scene. And that kind of woman becomes difficult to control, not because she becomes cold, because she becomes internally anchored. She no longer needs someone else to tell her worth. She no longer needs applause before trusting herself. She no longer confuses being wanted with being valued. That transformation looks quiet from the outside, But inside, something enormous has changed. The center of her life has moved. It moved from other people. It moved back into her own hands. And once that happens, manipulation becomes harder. Fear becomes weaker. Loneliness loses some of its power. Rejection stops feeling like a verdict. She can still love deeply. She can still care intensely. She can still cry. She can still feel everything. But she no longer hands her emotional steering wheel away. That is the real meaning of emotional self-reliance. It is not needing nobody. It is knowing you can survive yourself. You can survive disappointment. You can survive being misunderstood. You can survive someone walking away. You can survive the uncomfortable silence afterward. And that knowledge changes how you enter relationships. It changes how you handle conflict. It changes what you tolerate. It changes what you chase. Most importantly, it changes what you believe you deserve. Chapter 1. The day you stopped asking. There is a strange moment in every woman's life. Nobody else notices it. There is no dramatic music, no door slams, no speech in front of a mirror. It happens quietly, usually after exhaustion. Maybe you're sitting in your car. The engine is off. Your coffee has gone cold. Your phone is glowing beside you. You are staring at one message. You have rewritten your reply 6 times. You are trying to sound calm. You are trying to sound desirable. You are trying not to seem upset. Then something inside you gets tired. Not physically tired, something deeper. You suddenly realize what you're doing. You are negotiating for basic emotional security, and you hate the feeling, so you put the phone down, you breathe. You don't send the message. That tiny decision can change everything, because emotional freedom rarely arrives dramatically. It arrives through small refusals. You refuse to chase. You refuse to explain yourself endlessly. You refuse to perform for approval. You refuse to become smaller. You refuse to betray yourself for connection. At first, this feels incredibly uncomfortable. Your mind will create reasons to go back. Maybe they misunderstood you. Maybe you should explain again. Maybe they need more reassurance. Maybe you were too distant. Maybe you should apologize first. Maybe they will leave. There it is. The fear underneath everything. Maybe they will leave. And that fear controls more women than they realize. It controls the messages they send, the boundaries they avoid, the jobs they tolerate, the friendships they maintain, the relationships they desperately preserve. Sometimes fear disguises itself as kindness. Sometimes people-pleasing looks like love. Sometimes over-explaining looks like communication. Sometimes constant availability looks like devotion. But underneath it sits one quiet question. What must I become to keep them? That question can destroy your sense of self, because the moment you need someone to stay desperately, you start bargaining. You give more, you ask for less, you forgive faster, you accept things you once rejected. You silence instincts that once protected you. You call discomfort patience, you call anxiety love. You call self-abandonment compromise. Eventually, you barely recognize yourself. Then emotional self-reliance begins. It begins when you ask a different question. What do I need to remain myself? That question is radically different. It puts your life back inside your hands. You stop measuring yourself through reactions. You stop checking your value through someone else's mood. You stop treating silence as rejection. You stop treating distance as catastrophe. You start observing instead. You notice patterns. You notice behavior. You notice consistency. You notice how your body feels around certain people. You notice how peaceful your home becomes after certain conversations end. You notice how exhausted you feel after certain friendships. You notice how often you abandon your own needs. That awareness is uncomfortable, but discomfort can be useful. It can reveal what comfort was hiding. A woman who knows herself becomes harder to manipulate. She doesn't need to prove every feeling. She doesn't need everyone to agree. She doesn't need immediate closure. She can say, "I don't know yet." That sentence requires enormous strength. Because modern life rewards certainty, social media rewards performance, relationships often reward emotional convenience. But a self-reliant woman can pause, she can wait, she can think, she can change her mind, she can admit she was wrong, she can admit someone else was wrong. She doesn't need to win every emotional argument. She needs to remain honest with herself. That is a much higher standard, and it creates something powerful, inner authority. You stop asking everyone what your experience means. You start examining it yourself. You become your own witness, your own observer, your own quiet place to return. That does not make you detached. It makes you less desperate, and desperation changes everything. Desperate people accept crumbs. Grounded people notice the empty plate. Desperate people chase explanations. Grounded people watch behavior. Desperate people fear endings. Grounded people respect reality. This is where your freedom begins, not when everyone loves you, when you stop requiring it. Chapter 2. The Power of Not Being Needed. There is another level of emotional self-reliance. It is learning to live without constant emotional confirmation. That sounds simple. It is anything but simple. Think about the smallest moments. You send someone a message. They don't answer. Your mind immediately creates a story. Maybe they're angry. Maybe they lost interest. Maybe you said something wrong. Maybe someone else matters more. Your stomach tightens. You check your phone. Nothing. You check again. Still nothing. The silence becomes louder. But here's the important part. The silence contains no explanation. Your mind supplied one. That distinction can save you years of emotional suffering. Facts are facts. Stories are stories. Someone hasn't replied. That is a fact. They don't care about me is an interpretation. Those two things are not equal. Emotional self-reliance means learning that difference. You don't immediately believe every thought. You don't obey every emotional impulse. You create space between feeling and action. That space is freedom. You feel anxious. You don't immediately text. You feel rejected. You don't immediately retaliate. You feel lonely. You don't immediately return to someone harmful. You feel uncertain. You don't immediately demand reassurance. You breathe first. You observe first. Then you choose. That pause is where emotional maturity lives, and something surprising happens. The more you practice it, the calmer you become. Not because life becomes easier, because your reactions become less automatic. You become less dependent on external weather. Someone can be distant. You remain steady. Someone can disagree. You remain steady. Someone can criticize you. You listen without collapsing. Someone can praise you. You appreciate it without needing more. That balance is rare. Most people swing between extremes. They crave approval, then they fear losing it. They become addicted to reassurance. Then they resent needing reassurance. They want independence. Then loneliness scares them. True self-reliance lives somewhere between those extremes. You can need people. You simply don't need them to define you. You can love someone. You simply don't need their love to validate your existence. You can want a relationship. You simply don't need one to feel complete. That distinction changes your standards. You stop asking, "Will they choose me?" You start asking, "Do I choose this?" That's a completely different woman. The first question creates anxiety. The second creates discernment. You stop auditioning. You start observing. You stop trying to become irresistible. You start becoming authentic. You stop asking whether someone wants you. You start asking whether they respect you, whether they are consistent, whether their actions match their words, whether you feel peaceful around them, whether you can be honest without punishment, whether your boundaries are respected, whether your life becomes larger with them. Those questions are quieter, but they are much more powerful, because emotional dependence makes you focus outward. Self-reliance turns your attention inward, not obsessively. Honestly, you begin studying yourself. Why did that comment hurt? Why did I feel threatened? Why did I need their approval? Why did I ignore my instincts? Why did I stay after my trust disappeared? These questions aren't accusations. They are investigations. You are not trying to punish yourself. You are trying to understand yourself. That is where self-discovery becomes profound. You start meeting the parts of yourself you neglected. The ambitious part, the tired part, the frightened part, the creative part, the lonely part, the angry part, the hopeful part. You stop demanding that every part behave perfectly. You simply listen. And when you listen long enough, patterns appear. Maybe you learn to earn affection. Maybe you learn to avoid conflict. Maybe you learn to keep everyone comfortable. Maybe you learned that being easygoing meant being lovable. Maybe you learned to hide your needs. Maybe you learned to become useful. Useful people often receive praise, but praise isn't intimacy. Being needed isn't the same as being loved. That realization can hurt. It can also liberate you, because now you can choose differently. You can stop performing usefulness. You can stop rescuing everyone. You can stop managing everyone's emotions. You can let adults carry their own consequences. You can let people misunderstand you sometimes. You can let someone be disappointed. You can survive someone saying no. You can survive saying no yourself. That last one matters enormously, because boundaries aren't powerful until you can tolerate their consequences. Anyone can say no. The difficult part is accepting what happens afterward. Someone may become upset. Someone may become distant. Someone may call you selfish. Someone may stop benefiting from your availability, and you may feel guilty. Still, you can remain kind. Kindness does not require surrender. Compassion does not require self-erasure. A peaceful woman can still be firm. A soft woman can still be impossible to control. A loving woman can still walk away. This is the paradox. The less you need to control others, the more powerful you become. You don't need to force understanding. You don't need to manufacture loyalty. You don't need to chase attention. You don't need to win affection. You simply become clear, and clarity is deeply intimidating, not because it is aggressive, because it is difficult to manipulate. Chapter 3. The freedom of becoming your own home. Eventually, emotional self-reliance changes something deeper. You stop searching for home inside other people. You begin building it inside yourself. That does not mean becoming isolated. It means becoming internally safe. You can enter a crowded room. You can still belong to yourself. You can sit at dinner alone. You don't feel defective. You can spend Saturday evening without plans. You don't panic. You can walk through a difficult season. You don't immediately search for someone to rescue you. You learn something powerful. You can accompany yourself. That is one of the greatest forms of freedom. Imagine waking up on an ordinary morning. The room is quiet. Gray light touches the curtains. Your coffee is warm. Your phone is face down. There is no urgent message. No one is validating you. No one is criticizing you. And you're okay. Not euphoric, not pretending, just okay. Your life doesn't require constant emotional noise. You can hear yourself think. That silence becomes luxurious. You begin protecting it. You become careful about what enters your mind. You become careful about who receives your energy. You stop treating access to you as automatic. People notice. Some will admire it. Some will resist it. Some may accuse you of changing. They are right. You did change. You stopped being available for everything. You stopped explaining every decision. You stopped reacting to every emotional disturbance. You stopped confusing chaos with passion. And sometimes people prefer the old version. The old version was easier. She apologized quickly. She accepted uncertainty. She overextended herself. She answered every message. She explained every boundary. She stayed available. She needed approval. The new version is different. She still cares, but she has limits. She still loves, but she has standards. She still listens, but she trusts her judgment. She still gives, but she no longer gives herself away. That is emotional self-reliance. Not becoming untouchable, becoming unshakable. There is an important difference. Being untouchable means nobody gets close. Being unshakable means closeness doesn't destroy you. You can open your heart. You can remain yourself. You can trust someone. You can still trust yourself more. That is the balance worth building. Because the goal isn't emotional isolation. The goal is emotional sovereignty. Your emotions belong to you. Your choices belong to you. Your attention belongs to you. Your time belongs to you. Your standards belong to you. Other people can influence you. They don't get to govern you. And that changes relationships profoundly. You stop entering them from hunger. You enter them from abundance. You don't ask someone to complete your identity. You invite them into an identity already being built. You don't demand that they heal every insecurity. You take responsibility for your healing. You don't expect them to read your mind. You communicate clearly. You don't punish them for having boundaries. You respect theirs, and you expect the same respect. That is where mature love becomes possible, because two dependent people often create a fragile system. Each person becomes responsible for the other's emotional weather. One person's mood controls the room. One person's silence creates panic. One person's approval becomes oxygen. That's exhausting. Self-reliance breaks that cycle. You can say, "I love you," without meaning, "Please keep me." You can say, "I miss you," without meaning, "I cannot function without you." You can say, "I'm hurt," without meaning, "You must fix me immediately." You can say, "I disagree," without meaning, "You are my enemy." That emotional precision is strength. It allows honesty without destruction. And perhaps the most beautiful part comes later. You begin trusting your own company. You discover your own rituals, a morning walk, a notebook beside the bed, music in an empty kitchen, a long drive without notifications, a book with folded pages, a quiet room after sunset. These moments seem insignificant. They are not. They teach your nervous system something important. You are capable of being with yourself. You don't need constant stimulation. You don't need constant reassurance. You don't need someone watching. You can build a life that feels meaningful privately. That is where real confidence grows. Not from being admired, from being known by yourself. You know what you believe. You know what you tolerate. You know what you refuse. You know where you are still weak. You know where you are becoming stronger. You don't need to pretend perfection. You simply refuse to abandon yourself. That is the line. Everything changes after that line. You may still make mistakes. You may still choose the wrong person. You may still trust someone who disappoints you. You may still lose your temper. You may still have lonely nights. Self-reliance doesn't make you invincible. It makes recovery possible. You know how to return. Back to your values. Back to your breath. Back to your standards. Back to your own voice. And that is why emotional self-reliance can look dangerous. A woman who knows she can leave behaves differently. A woman who knows she can stand alone negotiates differently. A woman who doesn't fear rejection chooses differently. A woman who doesn't need constant approval speaks differently. A woman who can tolerate loneliness doesn't accept every company. A woman who trusts herself doesn't require permission. That woman cannot be easily purchased with attention. She cannot be easily controlled with silence. She cannot be easily trapped with guilt. She cannot be easily convinced that her instincts are meaningless. She watches, she listens, she thinks, then she decides, quietly, without needing an audience. That is power without performance. And perhaps that is the deepest form of female stoicism. Not becoming emotionless, not becoming hard, not pretending nothing hurts. It is learning that pain does not have to command you. Fear can speak. You don't have to obey it. Loneliness can visit. You don't have to surrender to it. Anger can rise. You don't have to become it. Love can arrive. You don't have to lose yourself inside it. You remain. That is the entire secret. You remain. When someone leaves, you remain. When someone misunderstands you, you remain. When plans collapse, you remain. When your old identity no longer fits, you remain. And eventually, something beautiful happens. You stop asking where you belong. You realize you belong with yourself first. Then everything else becomes a choice. Love becomes a choice. Friendship becomes a choice. Work becomes a choice. Where you live becomes a choice. What you tolerate becomes a choice. Who gets access becomes a choice. You stop living from emotional necessity. You start living from deliberate intention. And that is freedom. Not the freedom to have everything, the freedom to need less from everything, the freedom to walk away without hatred, the freedom to stay without fear, the freedom to love without disappearing, the freedom to be alone without feeling abandoned, the freedom to hear silence without panicking, the freedom to choose yourself without becoming cruel. That is the woman you are becoming. Not colder, clearer, not harder, stronger, not distant, self-possessed. She does not need to prove her strength. Her life reveals it. Her boundaries reveal it. Her silence reveals it. Her choices reveal it. And when the world becomes loud again, she knows where to return. Not to another person, not to applause, not to validation, not to distraction, to herself. Because the strongest woman in the room isn't always the one speaking. Sometimes she is the one sitting quietly, feeling everything, needing nothing explained, knowing exactly who she is, and knowing she will not abandon herself again. The architecture of rebirth, the art of dying to old habits. Chapter 1. The anatomy of exhaustion. You are bleeding out from a wound nobody can see. It happens on a Tuesday at 2:14 a.m. The blue light of your phone illuminates a ceiling you have stared at for 3 consecutive hours. Your chest feels heavy, anchored by a silent panic disguised as ambition. You call it productivity. You call it being strong. But your body knows the truth. Your body is screaming. Every single day you perform the exhausting ritual of holding it all together. You wake up before the sun. You answer emails with a polite smile that never reaches your eyes. You absorb the emotional turbulence of everyone around you while burying your own. You carry the invisible weight of expectations, family demands, career pressure, the quiet terror of falling behind. You have become an expert caretaker of everyone else's peace, while your own soul burns to the ground. Look closely at your hands. They are clenched into fists, even in your sleep. We live in a culture that tells women to endure, to bend without breaking, to smile through the fracture. But endurance without boundaries is just slow-motion self-destruction. You have weaponized your own endurance against yourself. You stay in draining dynamics because you are terrified of being labeled difficult. You chase perfection because deep down, you believe your worth is tied to how much suffering you can gracefully manage. This is not strength. This is slow-motion erosion. Think about the last time you truly rested. Not scrolling through social media while numbing your brain. Not sleeping out of sheer physical collapse. Actual, terrifying stillness. Your mind revolted, didn't it? It flooded you with guilt. It whispered that if you stopped moving, you would become irrelevant. It convinced you that your worth is measured by your exhaustion. That voice is a liar. Seneca wrote that we suffer more often in imagination than in reality, but he forgot to mention the specific torment women face, the internal theater where we rehearse our own sacrifices, we script our own martyrdom, we apologize for taking up space, we soften our boundaries with polite laughter. Enough. The cycle breaks the moment you admit the truth. The life you are currently protecting is killing you. The old habits, the people-pleasing, the over-explaining, the relentless pursuit of an impossible standard are not your identity. They are armor that has rusted shut around your lungs. To live, Something inside you has to stop breathing. Chapter 2. The Art of the Controlled Collapse. Transformation is not a gentle evolution. It is a demolition. True mental strength does not come from adding more habits, more morning routines, more productivity hacks to your overloaded plate. It comes from subtraction. It comes from the terrifying, liberating art of letting the old self die. Imagine a forest after a wildfire. It looks like total devastation. Ash covers the ground. Charred trunks stand like monuments to what was lost. To the untrained eye, it is a tragedy. But to nature, it is a clearance. The intense heat opens seeds that have lain dormant for decades. Nutrients return to the soil. Space is finally created for the light to reach the floor. You need a controlled collapse. Stop trying to fix your life with minor adjustments. You cannot remodel a house built on toxic soil. You have to watch it fall and build something unshakable from the bedrock up. Begin with the sacred art of silence. When someone crosses a boundary, do not rush to fill the uncomfortable air with justifications. Give them stillness. Let your silence be a boundary so sharp that it cuts through their expectations. Women are conditioned to smooth things over, to heal the friction, to keep the peace. Let the peace shatter. Let the room become heavy with the weight of your unexpressed compliance. In that silence, something inside your old ego dies. The part of you that desperately needed everyone to like you will thrash and scream. Let it starve. The part of you that derived pride from being the designated martyr will weep. Let it go. This is the crucible of modern Stoicism. It is the realization that your ultimate power lies in your absolute willingness to be misunderstood. Consider your energy as a closed economic system. For years, you have been running a deficit. You have handed out emotional loans to people who never intend to repay you. You have invested your most precious hours into environments that yield nothing but anxiety. Bankruptcy is terrifying, but it is also the ultimate reset. Declare bankruptcy on your old obligations. Walk away from the conversations that drain your vitality. Close the tabs in your mind dedicated to managing opinions you cannot control. When you stop bleeding energy into things that do not matter, a strange thing happens. The fog clears. Your nervous system remembers what safety feels like. You stop reacting. You start observing. This is where the marble texture of your character forms. Cold, smooth, impenetrable. The outside world can rage, project, and demand, but it hits a surface that refuses to absorb the chaos. You become an island, not because you are cold, but because you have finally learned that your internal sanctuary is too sacred to be rented out to casual trespassers. Chapter 3. The Unshakable Forge. There is a profound, quiet violence in stepping into your true power. People will not know what to do with the new version of you. The people who loved your compliance will call you distant. The people who relied on your self-abandonment will accuse you of changing. Let them talk. Their discomfort is simply the sound of your old cage locking from the outside. You are no longer available for things that cost you your peace. Walk through your days with an unhurried grace. Notice the texture of the air when you finally stop rushing to meet expectations. Notice the steady, rhythmic beat of your own heart when you realize that no emergency manufactured by someone else can penetrate your stillness. Marcus Aurelius sat in his military tent writing notes to himself, reminding his soul that it possesses the power to withdraw into itself at any moment. No chaos outside can touch the citadel of the mind. That citadel is yours. You built it with the ashes of your old habits, the bricks of your boundaries, and the mortar of your self-respect. You do not need to explain your evolution. Trees do not apologize for shedding their leaves in winter. They do not hold emergency meetings to justify their dormancy. They trust the dark. They trust the cold. They know that what looks like death is simply preparation for an unyielding, magnificent spring. Look in the mirror. The fatigue in your eyes is fading, replaced by a sharp, quiet clarity. The shoulders that once slumped under the weight of 1,000 unnecessary burdens are now dropped, relaxed, anchored. You are calm. You are untouchable. You died to the woman who tried to please everyone, and from those ashes, she finally woke up.